Yeah, as Joanna said, I've been a Tourism Awards judge for the past 4 years, and also one of the mentors working with various different operators. And I've also done a lot of work with SATA on putting together the nominees guidebook and just generally putting together a package of support that is provided to you guys, such as the seminar today. But prior to that, I've been one of you guys. I've written many Tourism Awards submissions on behalf of various different clients over the years. So lots of experience actually doing the hard yards writing, so I know exactly where you're coming from and I know how much effort it takes to put together a Tourism Awards submission. So I've been on both sides of the table there. So hopefully I'm going to give you some advice on how to approach question 1, but a lot of the advice that I'll give you hopefully will apply to your submission in general, so it's not just relevant for that question 1. So question 1, I like to think of it as a bit of an executive summary for your submission. So anyone out there who's written reports, you would know the role of an executive summary to really provide a good overview of the contents of the report and to really set the scene and paint a picture of what your business is all about. So approach question 1 like it is an executive summary. But also be aware that, just by entering the Tourism Awards, you're an industry leader. You're putting your hand up and saying, I'm a contender for being one of the best in my particular category. So be confident in your submission and make sure that that comes across. Don't be apologetic or feel that you're not worthy. Make sure that it comes across that you're assertive in a nice, obviously polite way, but also that you're confident you should be there. You are a serious contender for this award. And also keep in mind that, if you do win your state award, you go on to a national award, to be considered at national level. So there you're competing with some of the best around the country. So you really want to make sure that you're putting your best foot forward. So be confident. And the question 1 will also very much set the tone and the voice for your submission. So as I said, it sets the scene. If you don't master question 1, it's hard to claw back for the rest of the submission. I think it's probably fair to say, I don't know if we've ever actually done this actual research, Joanna, it would be interesting to do, but the scores for question 1, if that's not relatively high, then it will be hard for you to win your category. Given that question 1 really is probably the easiest in terms of it's just asking you about your business and what you do. So if you can't nail that one, it's going to be hard to answer some of the more complex questions on business planning and sustainability and that sort of thing that we'll cover today. So really, even though it seems straightforward and easy, pay lots of attention on question 1. You do want to set the scene and get those high points straight away. And as I've said there, you really want to be quite evocative in question 1. You want to paint a picture. This is the first contact that you will have with the judge, okay, this reading the question 1. So the 3 judges that are reading your submission are not necessarily the judge that will have done the actual site visit of your property. In most cases, it won't be. So there will actually be 4 different judges who gain some exposure to your property or your product or whatever event or whatever it happens to be. So for the judge that's doing the reading of the submission, the 3 judges, this will be the first contact. This could be the first thing they even know about your business. So don't assume any prior knowledge, though all of the judges or the majority do work in the tourism industry, and if they don't, they have a close affiliation with the tourism industry. And many of us have got lots and lots of experience. Myself, I've been involved in tourism for over 20 years. We don't know every operator out there. We don't know every single, town in South Australia. So write it as if we don't know much. So write it for a new set of eyes. Keep that in mind. So with question 1, you really want to win us from hello, to use a bit of a paraphrase, a well-known grab from a movie there. You really want to make that great first impression and make us want to visit, make the judge want to think, yeah, I want to go there, I want to do that tour, I need to go to that event, I can't wait to go to that cellar door. So really sell it, basically. It needs to be motivational. You can let your personality shine through. Now, one of the challenges, I think, with writing a Tourism Awards submission is maintaining that balance of motivation, so the passion and the enthusiasm and how wonderful your product is, but also getting the information across. because this is a submission writing exercise, you will be assessed on how well you've answered the question. You know, those of you who've done any study, just like if you've written an essay, have you answered the question? You know, and a common comment that I can see a few fellow judges out in the audience that we write is that you haven't actually answered this question. You've gone off on a tangent or deviated from what the question is asking. So though we want your passion to come through and we want to feel that motivation and really embrace your enthusiasm for your product, you do need to make sure the information, the actual facts, also comes through. So make sure you've got that nice balance of information and motivation. It's a bit like a visitor guide. You know, a tourism visitor guide needs to have the practical information of where to go, where to stay, phone numbers, all that practical stuff, but it also needs to make me want to visit that region or that town. So it needs to have a balance of those two. The other thing to really keep in mind, and I'll talk about this more in a moment when we look at 1C and D, is to maintain the tourism focus. So make sure that you keep in mind that this is a tourism award. Now this is particularly relevant for anyone who's an event, cellar door out there, restaurant, anyone who operates in other industries, not just the tourism industry. So a common mistake that perhaps events might make is to focus more on their role as a community sort of event rather than talking about the big picture tourism stuff. Likewise, a winery might focus too much on their actual wine rather than talking about what is their tourism offering. So just make sure that you always remember it's a tourism award. So we want to see what have you done for the tourism industry, what value, what role do you play in the tourism industry. So of course you're going to talk about all those other things, the community involvement, how fabulous your wines are and awards you've won, whatever, but you also need to make sure that that tourism angle really comes across strongly. Also a point on written expression. Now, Joanna said a minute ago that graphic design really isn't valued or important anymore. We don't allocate any points for how pretty things look. But certainly, though we don't technically allocate points for how well something is written, if your answers aren't well written, if there are spelling mistakes, grammatical errors, or just poor sort of written expression, sentence structure, it will negatively affect the impression of the professionalism of your business. So therefore, if it's hard work for us to read your submission, then obviously it's indirectly going to affect your score. So do pay attention to how well you convey your messages. You know, it might be something that you know individually, I'm not that great with that. Perhaps get someone else in your office or a friend or a family member, whoever, to perhaps have a proofread or give you some advice and help with that. You can go down the path of employing a professional copywriter, and I think, Joanna, in the guidebook there's some names of people that have done award submissions, but by no means do you have to do that. Most people that win awards haven't done that, but it's certainly a service there that you can use if you want to. What other points should I emphasise there? I've mentioned about your writing for a national audience. So even though most people's submissions here will only get read at a state level, those of you who win your category will automatically go on to the national awards. Now, as I said, don't assume that we as South Australians know much about your business, but that's tenfold when you go to a national audience. So you could have a judge from Cairns, from Hobart, from Darwin, who knows, reading your submission. So write this one, write your state one, because you're not going to have a chance to edit it or change it. It just goes as is. Write it for a national audience. So that's why things like a map and describing your location is really important. Don't assume that anyone knows where your region is or what's, you know, the highlights or what's on offer in your particular region. Make sure you do actually communicate that in a really succinct sort of way. I've mentioned about photos. Joanna's already gone through that, so I won't focus on that. But this advice here is really just general advice for question one, and it's applicable for the rest of your submission. What I'll do now is go through the 4 different components of question one and give you some tips on how to approach those various aspects. So question 1A is asking you to demonstrate your eligibility for the category as related to that descriptor that will be provided in the guidebook, and provide an overview on the nature and history of your business. So the first thing that you really need to do, and it seems like a really obvious thing, but you do need to do it, is to demonstrate your eligibility for that category. So you need to explain to us why your business fits that category. Now, in some cases, it's very obvious. If you're, a five-star hotel entering luxury accommodation, well, yeah, it's pretty obvious. But just restate, basically like you do with an essay writing, repeat what the question says and actually illustrate to us why you fit that particular category. Because we do have always probably a few each year when we're meeting as judges that we discuss and think, why are they in that category? Shouldn't they be in that category? Now, certainly Joanna will discuss that with you if there's an issue early in the piece, but then there's still generally a couple that sort of keep going through the process because they feel they should be in that category, and there might be some discussion at judging level as to whether they really should be, and sometimes it works against them when it comes to scoring. So make sure you're in the right category and then prove to us, provide some evidence as to why you should be in that category. And pay close attention to the wording used in that category descriptor. Sorry, I'm coming down with a bit of a cold. And as it says there on the slide, if you don't demonstrate your eligibility, it's one of those things that will affect the rest of your submission. It'll affect the point score for question 1, but then it will probably indirectly also affect the rest of those questions too. So in this question, we really just want you to tell us what you are and what do you offer. It's pretty straightforward. But also some historical information. When was your business started? How has it evolved? If there has been changes of ownership structure or management, talk about that. Maybe you've expanded or changed focus over the last decade or whatever it's been. Tell us the story of your business, but obviously, always going to say this, in a concise and quite direct way, because you've only got those 12,500 words. We would normally say pretty much divide that by 5, and then that's how much you're going to get. So what does that work out to? About 2.5-ish for each question. And then within question 1, you've got 4 parts again. So you really, even though it sounds like you've got a lot of words, you'll probably find many of you that you end up with about 15, and then you need to edit it back. You do need to edit it back, by the way. You can't go over. So you do need to learn the art of writing quite concisely. So we want to know who owns the business too, whether that's a single sole operator, family business, or whether you are a large, local council or whatever it is. We need to know what's the actual management structure, who owns that business. And as Joanna said earlier, we need to know where you are located, and a map is a good idea there. So perhaps a map of your area or your town, then with a region, and then a larger South Australian map could work really well with a little arrow, that sort of thing, just to explain exactly where you are. So to summarise for 1A, really sell us your business, but leave us with no doubt as to why you should be in that category and why you are a leader, why you're the best in that category. Because remember, that's what you're trying to prove to us. You are the best self-contained accommodation. You are the best regional event. You are the best winery cellar door in Australia. Let's say it, in Australia, even though we've got to win the state one first. Okay, question 1B. Which is asking us, what tourism products, experiences and services do you offer visitors? And this really is an opportunity to really sell the sizzle of your business. This is where the real motivation balanced with informational content needs to come through. What do you actually offer? It's amazing how many submissions that we see that don't actually clearly state that. And a dot point format could work well here. If you're a tour operator, give us an introduction paragraph and then just dot point. What are the tours that you actually offer? Just really stipulate it clearly. But also you might like to discuss within this question, what sets you apart from your competitors? Why are you different or special? Why are you the best? You need to convey that. As I've said there, start with an intro part and then just use dot points to outline, or a table, whatever there's no set way that you have to do this, but just make it really logical and outline each aspect of the experience and the services on offer. And this is really where we want you to make us want to visit or do the tour or attend the event or the restaurant or whatever it is. Make it sound really, really attractive, but also include that actual information. Include price points here, so that's useful information for us. So You don't need to give us a massive table of every price that, different seasons or whatever, but just give us an indication of the main price points there. Include information on any little extras that you offer. So if you're an accommodation provider and you give a bottle of wine and a regional produce platter, or any little extras that you offer in addition to just the accommodation. So outline all of that sort of information. And include some visuals, obviously, in this section. A picture tells 1,000 words, as they say. So give us, if you have various different types of accommodation, give us some photos of the different types. If you're a restaurant, give us some photos of the restaurant. People dining or even just set up for service, or some food shots would be nice as well. Really give us some imagery that helps to tell the story of what, to complement the words. Keep in mind too with tourism awards, and this goes for every question, is that the judges are all volunteers. So we all have regular jobs or run businesses or whatever it is. So we are reading these submissions, most of us, in the evening, 9, 10 o'clock at night after a day of work and getting the kids in bed and whatever else you've had to do. So we're tired, for one. We're doing it from a volunteer perspective. We don't want to work hard at having to read a really convoluted document. So the better, the more effective way that you can get that message across, making sure that it is free of spelling errors and all those little things really will help you. If you get I know from experience, if you get a document that's hard work to read, it's just poorly written, it's much harder and it is indirectly going to affect your score. Whereas if you then get one that's beautifully written and it just flows and the questions are answered, it lifts you as a judge and you're just like, yes, that's great. And that will obviously benefit your score. So keep that in mind. Okay, question 1C. So for question 1, parts 1A and B are really just asking you to tell us about your business, tell us about you, what's the history and what do you offer. So very straightforward. Pretty much I would hope I could send all of you away for 2 hours and you should be able to come back with a draft of that, because you should be able to write that pretty much from your heart and your mind. When we get to question 1C, it starts to get a little bit more in-depth and a little bit more probably esoteric. So you need to perhaps think a little bit more about these ones. So question 1C is asking you to describe your commitment to tourism excellence. As I say, bit esoteric, isn't it? A little bit vague, maybe. The first thing I suggest that you do is think about, well, what does tourism excellence mean to you? Everyone will be slightly different, but perhaps even starting your answer with what does tourism excellence mean to your business? So Beachview Bed and Breakfast considers tourism excellence to be da-da-da, that sort of thing. So actually tell us what you identify as tourism excellence. We then need you to tell us how you deliver on that. So it's almost like you're going to be providing like a mission and a value statement. Anyone who's done business plans will probably come across that sort of terminology. You might want to then use those sort of, if you do have a mission or a value statement, use that sort of information in here as evidence of your commitment to tourism excellence. And then tell us, well, how do you deliver this excellent tourism product? So that might be some more practical things you do to ensure that you deliver tourism excellence. There is a later question that will talk more about customer service, so don't get too bogged down with the detail that you offer in terms of customer service there, but you can certainly allude to it, give us a hint of what you do in that area. Likewise, what's your philosophy or approach when it comes to the tourism industry, and how does this set you apart, and what values are important? So, for example, if sustainable tourism is really important to you, if you operate your business in an unspoiled environment, let's say, then I would say that you have a strong bent towards sustainable tourism, and that really encapsulates your philosophy to tourism. So you might want to state that there. You can also talk about the tangible sort of accreditation programs, any recognition that you've received there within that question, once again as evidence of your commitment to tourism excellence. So if you have tourism accreditation, to me that is evidence that you are committed to tourism excellence. If you've won any local business awards, that sort of thing, once again that's evidence of your commitment to tourism excellence. So talk about those things there. Be mindful that each sub-question has a point allocation. So parts 1A and B were 6 points each, and then parts 1C and D are 4 points each. So use those points as a guide as to how much you should be writing. Obviously, if something is worth 6 points, dedicate more words to that than the 4-point questions. Just a little thing, but it does, and it can help you when you're going through your editing process. If you want to know where should I cut stuff, we'll obviously look at the point allocation. So as I say, question C is really about just telling us why you are a good tourism operator. What are the things that you do? What's your philosophy and values that guide your business planning and the way you do business? And then by backing that up with some evidence. Just a word too that though most questions for every category are the same, there are slight variances. So I think for categories 3 and 4, which are the event categories, the question here is slightly different. I'm hoping that hasn't changed, Joanna? Yeah. So in categories 3 and 4, it's asking how does your event enhance the profile and appeal of your destination? So the sort of things there you might want to consider is, what is the tourism profile of your region and experience on offer in the destination? How does your event reflect this? So tie it back in with the actual tourism vision for the region. Is the event a tourism drawcard in its own right? As I said earlier, one of the main, who is from a festival or an event here? Do you want to? Great, a few people here. One of the main issues, oh hello Kiralee, I just saw you there. Familiar faces everywhere. One of the main problems we see with event or festival submissions is that they don't focus on tourism. So make sure, even with your terminology, that you focus on the tourism industry. Hunt out the regional profile for your region and try and link it in with, what are the key experiences and how is it complementing the tourism offering of that region. Just keep that one in mind. All right, so the last part of question 1, 1D. So 1C was really asking you to give your big picture view on your tourism philosophy and your commitment to tourism excellence. 1D is asking you to back that up with some evidence. Let's back that up with some examples of what are you actually doing in the tourism industry to show this tourism excellence and also just to be a committed, active operator in the tourism industry. In this question, we really want to demonstrate your understanding of the tourism industry. So we want to know how does your business, or how do you see that your business fits into the tourism industry, both at your regional level, but also a state and national level. And the best way to approach this, I'll show you an example in a tick, is just to clearly define your contributions at each level. So as with 1C, I would approach this question with a short introductory paragraph that encapsulates the question. So what is your involvement? It might be just stating that you're an active member of the tourism industry, etc. But then using either some subheadings or a table format to clearly illustrate regional, state and national involvement. So you might do it something like this. Hopefully you can see that, yep. And these are only random examples. There's going to be lots of other stuff that you guys could include, but these are some of the typical ones. So if you're talking about your regional involvement in the tourism industry, it can be things like you're a member of the local tourism association or the Progress Association or the Commerce Association, whatever it is. Maybe you've taken an ad in the regional visitor guide or even the town. If your town has a little brochure and you've taken an ad in that, pop that in there, that's fine. Maybe you've done some cooperative advertising with other tourism operators in your region. Maybe you've taken a full-page ad in the local paper or done something like that. That can all be used as examples of how active you are in the regional tourism industry. Maybe you do for meals for local VIC volunteers, or maybe you just take in brochures or pop into the VIC once a month, have a chat with the volunteers just to make sure that you're top of mind when visitors come in. So they don't have to be massive things that have cost you a lot of money or time. They can just be very much things you do every day but you probably don't even think about, but these are the sort of things that you can allocate to these various headings. So that could be your regional involvement. And there'll be lots of other things, I'm sure of it. Your state involvement, so South Australia, how are you involved with the South Australian tourism industry? This is where it gets harder, I think, for a lot of the smaller businesses out there. You might think, well, it's not realistic for us to take large ads or to participate in, say, the Australian Tourism Exchange. Rest assured, we would not expect you to do that. You know, if you're a bed and breakfast or a small restaurant or cellar door, we're not going to be expecting you to do these major national activities. There will be businesses out there that we would expect that of, but certainly for most of you, we don't have the expectation. But what we are looking for is your appropriate level of involvement and awareness of what's happening in the industry. So state stuff could be that you've come today. That's one for your state involvement, that you're a member of SATIC. Maybe you went to the SATIC conference a few weeks ago. Maybe you've attended some of their service IQ training around the state or the Meet the Minister events that they're doing at the moment. There's heaps of stuff already that you could be including in your state involvement. Likewise, maybe you attended some sort of SA Tourism Commission briefing, or you maintain regular contact with them, or you go and visit the staff perhaps, or have meetings, that sort of thing. Maybe you've provided accommodation for famils, for trade or media famils for SATC. That can all be seen as your involvement in the tourism industry. And then national, for those of you that it's relevant. And I would say it's relevant for everyone, but as I said earlier, we don't expect a small business to have attended things like the Discover SA trade show or ATE and that sort of stuff. But we would expect, as a tourism operator, that you subscribe to Tourism Australia e-newsletters, things like that, just to keep up to date and abreast of what's happening in the industry. So we would expect that level of involvement, just basically showing that you are actively trying to understand where you fit into the big picture. So it could be that you just literally subscribe to a few newsletters, that sort of thing. They're just some of the things that you could include. I think the entrance guidebook includes more examples for each question of the sort of things you could include. And I would encourage you all to come and look at that submission that Joanna mentioned, because then you can get an idea of the sort of things that other businesses might include there. But it's an important question, but don't feel intimidated by that question. I think a lot of operators think, as I said, oh, we don't do anything, what are we going to put in there, we're going to get no points. But when you think about it, there probably is quite a lot of stuff that you do, certainly at a regional and state level. So make sure that all goes in there. A few other words on tourism terminology. Make sure you use it. I've already hinted at this. So use things like intrastate and interstate, international visitors. This is particular advice for those businesses not operating just within the tourism industry. So if you're an event or a cellar door or a restaurant, that sort of thing, just brush up. Go on the either SATIC or the SATC website to the research and report section and just get your head around the sort of terminology that is used, because we will expect to see that. And also when you talk about, you could also talk about economic benefits, how much does your business inject into the local community? So you can use some dollar figures there in terms of visitor spend, that sort of thing. That will require a bit more analysis, but certainly with events we would expect to see that. But some of the other tourism businesses, you can just use how much, revenue you generate, but you might not want to, it's a touchy area, that one. It's up to you whether you want to share that level of information. But even if let's say you're a destination restaurant, people come to this town or region to go to your restaurant, you could argue that your influence on the wider region, you're bringing a huge benefit. You're benefiting the petrol station and other attractions, etc., in that region. So you can sort of argue along those lines. All right, so to wrap up for question one, as I said, sell it to us. It's your first contact with the judge. Win us at hello. Got to make us want to read on, but also to make us want to visit and to really experience this business. Tell us why you are the best. Position yourself as the best. Show us that you get and understand the tourism industry and that you're active in the tourism industry, even if that's just keeping abreast with information. Let your passion and personality shine through, but maintain or balance that with the facts, the factual information, and make sure you answer that question. Keep calm, as I say there. I know it's a massive exercise to put together one of these, and as we go through today, every other speaker will give you tips, often from personal experience of how you should approach it. But my approach would be to write a draft of each question, just sit there and get it out, even if it's dot points. Don't worry about perfect prose. Just get every idea. Hopefully, you've been keeping a little file of ideas for the Tourism Awards, or every time you've got a nice email from someone or a bit of media coverage that's gone in the file, that sort of thing. Compile all that information, just write from the heart and the head, and then go back and really workshop and look for information and perhaps get some advice from one of the mentors, that sort of thing. But just get something down. I tell my students at uni, I say this, just write anything, because then we can come back and edit it afterwards.